Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Dr. Mandie Unedited, the podcast where we decode academic writing and demystify research. All right, my name is Dr. Mandie, and I'm your new unofficial academic advisor. Now, I want to start gearing my topics to some things that actually help you out. So far, I've been breaking down the different parts of the PhD, but I think that people need some insight to all those unspoken underlayers of pursuing a PhD. So, as you may or may not know, I have been on TikTok recently. So, check out at Life with Dr. Mandie on TikTok. But I'm making so many new friends in academics and other areas, and I really love it. It's so much fun. But I'm getting a lot of people asking me questions about the PhD process who are not necessarily in it yet and are still filling out the idea. So, what I'm getting from that is that maybe we need to discuss, is a PhD right for you? So, today I'm going to discuss some of the things that you really need to consider when you pursue a PhD, because no matter what pathway you choose, no matter what field you're getting in, getting a PhD will be one of the biggest tests of your life, y'all. So it is not a decision to make lightly. We'll discuss today about the PhD. Is it a good fit for you? Are you a good fit for it? And what are some of the real costs of doing a PhD? And maybe at the end of this episode, you're like, I don't know anymore. Don't worry, I got some good alternative pathways for you. But first, y'all know I gotta be spilling the goss. What's been going in my life that's like not the weather? I know I've been discussing that so much recently. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've just been sick on and off because apparently when you move to a new country, you are exposed to everything your body is not used to. So I have been dealing with that, but I have also been working on my going out skills because, being a neurodivergent person, that can be really tricky. So, one of my most recent soirees that I went to a Scottish wedding recently, y'all, which was like absolutely thrilling. So, I know I say this a lot if you keep listening, but for those of us who don't know, I am an American living in the UK, and so I get so many thrilling experiences, from this new culture that I'm living. So yeah, the wedding that I went to was not in Scotland, but I still got to experience the kilts. I got to experience the tying of the knot, which everyone was really excited to know my opinion on. Because I guess I guess they thought it was probably the first time that I had seen that. So I was trying to remain, like thrilled, but like really, I went to a wedding ages ago that it was someone I didn't even know. I was just, going as kind of like a date for a friend. But the bride and groom, they did this like really crazy ceremony where they had like all these really random wedding traditions, and I didn't really realize what some of them were when they were doing it. I was just like, okay, how many times do we have to, like profess our love to each other or whatever? But yeah, so during the ceremony, they did do the tying the knot situation. They did like kind of like this other big thing with like putting this blanket around like their bodies, they tied it around themselves. And then I remember the strangest part of that wedding was that at the end of the ceremony, actually the bride and groom walked down the aisle, and then they stopped and spoke to every single person, which was probably quite a bit opposite to where usually you see maybe like the bride and the groom stand at like the entrance of the reception or something like that, and everyone comes and congratulates them. But I don't know, after that wedding that I went to years ago, I really had to like Google some of those traditions, but I realized one of the traditions that they were doing was tying the knot. I don't know. All I remember about that one is that it took them forever. Like when they were walking down the aisle talking to every single person, we had to stand there for like an hour in the sanctuary, and I was so over it. But anyway, the wedding that I went to last weekend, it was pretty epic. So far in the UK, every wedding that I've been to has been, it's been amazing. I went to one last year that had like those giant, I think they call them like 747 planes at the entrance of the reception, and Daniel Radcliffe videoed in to say like congratulations. That one was wild. But this one, it had like four bars in it. They had some really good Scottish whiskey. I'm not gonna lie. It was so good. I wish I had like all of the bottles, but they also had a cocktail bar, they had a Prosecco bar, and then they just had like kind of like a beer bar. But my favorite part was that the bride had little bottles of limoncello at the tables, which I have not had limoncello since I lived in Italy many years ago. I had to teach everyone how to drink limoncello because I guess not a lot of people knew what limoncello was at the wedding. But, it was a treat for me, I'm gonna say, to sit at the table and have a few sips of that, and I don't know, it was just one of my favorite things back in the day when I was in Italy, and it was probably one of my favorite things of that night to have that little treat. Anywho, I now have like 85 invites to come up to Scotland. As the wedding, yeah, happened in the southwest of England. Again, wasn't in Scotland. So I think Scotland's gonna have to be my next big travel. I am determined to make it up there, and now I have a lot of friends that I think are going to probably host me. So let's get down and dirty, okay? Let's talk about, is a PhD right for you? So first, let's just talk about what a PhD is. It might seem kind of obvious to some. However, I find that especially between the US and the UK, the motivations behind pursuing a PhD can be quite different, and not everyone is aware of exactly what it entails because of their motivations. So yeah, just to define it plain and simple, a PhD is self-directed research degree focused on an original contribution to knowledge. So that basically means that you come up with something that has not necessarily been studied yet, and you research it, and that's your contribution to the research world. There are a bunch of different types of PhDs. Some are, like the traditional PhD where you spend 3+ years researching, writing a dissertation or a thesis, and then you give like some sort of oral defense. Then there are professional doctorates. So these are not necessarily PhDs, but this is where you see, like, I think like EDD or DMA. But this is what a lot of people who are looking for, professional advancement. And so these types of degrees typically combine some sort of like real world practice with some kind of doctorate elements in it. Instead of like a dissertation or a thesis, it might include a smaller project. Then there are integrated PhDs, which combine typically like maybe like a 1 year master program with like a 3 year PhD. This is really great for students who are like transitioning from undergrad, who have a really clear, maybe like really aggressive pathway to where they want to be in their lives. And so for example, my brother did this for sports medicine. He knew that, that's where he wanted to end up. So he did like the master's PhD mashup. And yeah, it probably saved him some time. And he also had a firm that was really eager to hire him as well. So yeah, like he really had a clear, straight shot direction to where he wanted to go. And finally, you have PhD by publishing, which I find a lot of people don't know exists out there. But this basically means that if you already have a really established understanding of a field, you've already been publishing papers, instead of going through the entire PhD process, you can take those papers that you've published on a topic, I think probably create some sort of like final defense, and that's how you get the degree. So there are a bunch of other little ways, but the important part is figuring out which one of those is like the right pathway for you. All right, what are some of the things you should ask yourself before diving into a PhD? Okay, this is where we're gonna get real, y'all. You know what I mean? Well, you need to really ask yourself, do you love research enough to do it for a bunch of years? Because not only you're gonna do it for a bunch of years, but you are gonna be sat on the same topic for a bunch of years. Okay, it could probably, I did finish my PhD in under 3 years, but it's probably going to take at least 3 to 7 years, even plus, to get there, right? Another question you need to ask yourself is, are you able to commit years of pretty much full-time work to this, especially if you're getting paid little for it, or if you're paying for the PhD. So yeah, there are some programs out there that will offer you a stipend, maybe like, some sort of funding, or you have to like teach or kind of do extra things alongside the PhD to earn the income. But I think that is probably more relevant, especially outside of the United States. So like, there are probably in the United States, it's a bigger thing that you actually have to pay for the PhD. Next, yeah, you got to think about, what is your motivation for getting the PhD? Are you pursuing this for passion, prestige, or pressure? Surprisingly, to me at least, a lot of people say that they want a PhD because they just wanted to do it. But if you just really want to do it, do you have a gutso to go through with it with just passion? You know what I mean? Another big question is, what is your life dynamic, and can a PhD fit into it? Because one of the biggest things I always tell people, and I know it's probably a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but the PhD has to be one of your number one priorities. And that means that it has to be a number one priority, not under, but alongside your children, your family, your hobbies, and all the other most important stuff, in life. So, if you hold it at number two to anything, I find those people are the ones that are, getting really comfortable with making excuses to why they're not turning in papers on time, why they're not meeting their deadlines for their dissertation, why they're not, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then it ends up being a lot longer, a lot more costly process. So that's a really real something that people need to consider before getting into a program. At the end of the day, don't just jump into a PhD all willy-nilly with no plans. It will definitely be a lot more than you expected. Even if you think that you're pretty confident in the process, there's always going to be some kind of thing that is going to probably test you along the way. So how can we know if a PhD is a good fit? All right, can you pair your interests with a viable research project? All right, not everyone goes into a PhD that, well, with a solid project idea. It depends on the route that you take. Sometimes you have to, do a proposal for a solid research idea, but then sometimes you're actually going to do coursework, and that proposal will develop over time. However, you really need to still think about, if you're pursuing a PhD, I know a lot of people already have kind of like a general topic in their head that they want to research, but are you going to be passionate enough about, again, that project for many years? Can you really make the topic that you have work? I do see a lot of people thinking like, oh, like, I've got this really great general idea, and they go in and they do the research, they do the reading during their program, and they realize, like, a lot of it is already covered. You know what I mean? A lot of it is already really overdone. So then you got to think also about time management, whatever. I don't know what I just said. But do you have the discipline to work on something on your own without setting deadlines. The PhD process, guys, it can be really lonely, and it can be really kind of like up to you to figure everything out, right? So in a lot of cases, you might not even have like a supervisor that's very present. So can you figure things out on your own? Can you, do the research, not, necessarily like research, but can you get on those Facebook groups? Can you figure out the cohorts? Can you, go places in the internet to figure out what you gotta do to get the thing done on your own? Because, yeah, PhD will definitely be leaving you hanging out there sometimes. And so now let's talk about the cost, literally and figuratively. So, first, a PhD, yeah, it could mean, 3 to 7 years of your life, sometimes even more, because yes, I know people that have been trying to pursue a PhD for 15, 20 years. Y'all, don't be one of those people, all right? So, what does your timeline look like? Can you contribute your most intense focus for that long? And then, of course, there's money. So, like I said, some people they self-fund, so you have to pay for it yourself. And then some people are funded, but it might not be a lot. It might mean living very frugally for years, because yeah, being in a PhD program, it's a full-time job basically, right? And so also ask yourself, what is the cost of it emotionally? Can you handle all of the things that come with like imposter syndrome and burnout and the isolation? But not only that, but do you have family support? Will you be happy like missing, like, a really real reality, y'all, is that you might have to miss, your kids' games. A lot of people want to do both, have like the family life, have like the social life, and do the PhD. But those are the people who, again, who have elongated their timeline for years, and they also, it's going to cost them more in the end. So real talk, when my mom pursued her PhD, I was an older teenager. I had my driver's license, everything like that. So she literally sat in her room at nights, and she sat in her room at weekends studying. So it was like, up to me as that older teenager to do the shopping, pick my brother up from sports and practice and all of that. And so I have another family member as well who, she had to give up her nursing license and could not work as a requirement of pursuing her degree. So she lived off of her spouse's income for the 3 years that she pursued her degree. So what I'm trying to get at is just be really real about, overall, there can be some really serious costs to doing this thing, and you really have to think about that before diving in. So lastly, I'm not trying to steer you away from the PhD. I think everyone who feels like they're capable of doing it should at least try, because, I want all the big, beautiful, brilliant brains of the world doing research and being called doctor. But let's talk about some alternatives just in case, okay? So maybe you've asked yourself some of these questions, and if you are like really, really, really not sure, I mean, there's a difference between if you're just like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do it, but then like if you're like, oh my gosh, I really don't know if I can do this, then you look, there's still some pretty good pathways, all right? So I talked about the professional doctorate earlier. This one it means like, some coursework, and instead of writing, 100, 200 pages of a dissertation, of a thesis, typically it requires maybe like, I don't know, the ones that I've edited have only been like 17 to 20 pages. And it typically is something kind of just almost like a literature review, or like a review of the topic, or a very minimal research project. And so with this type of degree, you still get the DR in front of your name, right? The only thing that you're typically missing is like the dissertation bit. And sometimes that's like all people need, because sometimes like this is like a really good pathway if you're just looking for professional advancement, right? If you're not necessarily looking to research research, and you just, you want the pay rise, or you want the next level, the next promotion, a lot of people go to the professional doctorate phase. There are also research fellowships, like industry roles, creative projects that you can do instead. In the UK, I find that it is a lot more common for people to research without PhDs. They're still, doing the same job that I do. They just might not, have climbed the ladder as quickly. They get paid probably a little bit less, but I find that a lot of times my expertise in a project can simply be like the advanced understanding of how to research, whereas a lot of other people can still be experts in the field without a degree. So what I'm getting at is that, a lot of people are still doing high level quality research, just, not with the degree, just getting the experience. And then lastly, just check out, master level specializations and certifications. There's a lot out there that, they might meet your goal just as well as a PhD. So at the end of the day, a PhD it's not simply a badge of honor, y'all. Look, it is an uphill battle. It is a journey, and it really is worth it to take some time and consider if going down this path really aligns with your goals and values. But of course, if you have any questions about the PhD process, the best place to ask is again on TikTok, which may sound silly, but I do get to my DMs faster that way. So if you're thinking about doing a PhD, or if you are in one and you need some coaching or some editing help, you can reach out to me through my email, mandiekf@gmail.com. That's MANDIE kangaroo foxtrot at gmail.com, or you can reach out to me at www.drmandieedits.com. All right. In the meantime, anything else you may need is probably in my link tree. It's in the description below. So anyway, thank you so much for having a little chat with me today. I hope that I've given you some insight rather than worry. So go live up life, y'all. Because if you decide to start a PhD, it's gonna probably be really hard to do that after. But in the meantime, you know where to find me. And okay, see ya, bye.